Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Selling Greenville, your favorite real estate podcast here in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm your host, as always, Stan McCune, realtor right here in the Greenville area. You can find all of my contact information in the show notes if you need to reach out to me for any of your real estate needs. Just a reminder, as always, please like, rate, review, subscribe, all those good things. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, please make sure you don't miss future episodes by hitting the subscribe button or whatever button it is that is on the app that you're using. We're going to jump right in. This is episode 200. 200 for the show. An insane milestone. Could not have made it to episode 200 without you guys, my great listeners. So many of you tune in every single week. And I'm just blown away that we've made it to 200 episodes. And there will be a special prize given to one of you listeners. I'm going to get into a few more details later. But there will be an episode 200, a special prize that I will be doing. And I'm going to announce that not at the beginning, not at the end. It's going to be somewhere in the middle of this podcast, make you guys actually listen. Because I want to make sure that I don't just give it away in a very obvious place. But please listen to the entire episode so you don't miss that. And by the way, a lot has happened since I last recorded. I've been recording all of these episodes, a week or two in advance. So I recorded the past week's episode the week prior, and a lot happened. By the way, I forgot to wish everyone a Merry Christmas last time. That was my bad. This is what happens when you record episodes early. You kind of forget, okay, this is going to be my last episode before Christmas, whatever. I'm making up for it for those of you watching on YouTube. I am wearing an ugly sweater that involves Santa actually riding a T-Rex, which I think is the most American thing ever. Okay. Regardless, I've been dealing with a lot of interesting things lately. It's just been an interesting last few weeks. And this episode that I'm recording on December 18th. Long story short, I do not want to have to be recording or thinking about podcasts over the holiday season. So recording everything early. So this won't be until after Christmas, but I hope you guys had a great Christmas. But I'm excited to share, if you don't already know, which probably a lot of you do, a few days ago, as I'm recording this. Now, if you're listening to this a few weeks ago, Fox News actually reached out to me, not Fox News Local, Fox News Digital, reached out to me because of this podcast for a comment on why people are flocking to Greenville from other areas of the country. And so I gave them some information, and I really didn't know what was going to come of it. I've never had the media reach out to me. Local media tends to have their own kind of circle of a handful of realtors that they like to get comments from. But the national media does not have ties to those agents. And so a local person that works for Fox News Digital just passed along my information, apparently. And they ended up quoting me a lot in this article that they published in Greenville, and I was just pretty much blown away from it. I'll link to the article in the show notes if you want to read it. There's no paywall, but it has prompted some people to enter an email address, and if you want to bypass that, I believe you can bypass it by simply turning on Reader View in your browser after you click the link. Anyway, I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to get the type of exposure that Fox News granted me. That absolutely blew me away. And that wouldn't be possible if this show didn't have listeners. So, again, one more little tidbit. We're episode 200, and I'm going to do something special for my listeners in this episode. Specifically, I will be giving away a $200 Amazon gift card, $1 for every episode, to one of you. But again, you have to listen to the rest of this episode because at some point I'm going to give the details on how you can win the gift card. It's going to come a little bit later. Okay. on to the meat and potatoes of the episode. This is the recap of 2023. Look at all these things coming together, right? The end of 2023, episode 200, me being on Fox News, me doing a giveaway. Like, this is just an exciting episode all around for me. And this isn't going to be too data heavy. We are going to look at the market stats for the month of November that just came out a few days ago. But I just want to kind of talk really big picture, both macro and micro, I guess. And I want to start off just by talking about my personal business, right? Because some of you have actually expressed interest in what the year was like for me. We talk a lot about just the general what's happening in the market, but I want to talk specifically about what was going on with my business. And I just want to say that my business reflected a lot of people's business that I experienced earlier this year, which was in January. We just had a really, really insanely slow start to the year. Like, it was most comparable. Like, the closest thing I can compare it to is when we had the pandemic and like things kind of came to a halt. We're all in lockdowns. Nobody is, calling about real estate. People are just walking their dogs, keeping their distance from people, all of that. And that's what it was like at the very beginning of this year. And I talked to a lot of other agents that are even more experienced than me that experienced the exact same thing. And then in February, our phones started getting hot. People started calling. People started getting interested in things, a little more activity. And then when March came around, all of a sudden, we were right back in the thick of it. And before you knew it, it felt like a normal year again. We discussed this a lot on this show, but buyer demand stabilized in November of last year, of 2022, and it simply took a few months for that demand stabilization to actually be felt all over the country and with realtors nationwide. And so that's what happened with me. I really didn't feel it until the end, middle towards the end of the first quarter. That was when it was like, okay, this isn't going to be an apocalyptic year. It's going to be okay. We're going to make it. And then it ended up being a very, very normal year overall. Now, essentially 2 months of the year were very slow. So in a sense, I kind of lost 2 months of this year of normal business. And as a result, my business was down ever so slightly this year. Now, I'm not going to discuss actual numbers of closings, numbers of commissions, or amount of commissions, all of this stuff, because it's literally a no-win situation if I start getting into that, right? There's going to be some people that will hear that and be like, well, that's like nothing, right? They'll hear, they have in their mind that the average realtor gets hundreds and hundreds of closings. They're going to hear my number and be like, well, Stan's small time. Then on the other side of the equation, you'll have some people that will hear the numbers and be like, well, my gosh, Stan is making tons and tons of money. He's doing super well. Like, he's doing better than me. Like, why should I have to pay him a commission? So there's really a no-win situation when you start getting into this. I've heard realtors, I haven't really experienced this too much myself, but I've heard realtors that have actually lost out on deals on both sides of the equation, right? You've had some people that are like, well, I'm not going to use you because I want to give, you're doing just fine. I want to give business to my cousin that just got licensed. They need the money, right? That's a subtle way of saying, we don't think that you need the money. And we're not going to give you our business. But on the other hand, I've heard of realtors. There was a realtor just recently that was telling me how she missed out on a listing. She went to a listing appointment, and it was a competitive appointment. So there were other realtors that had already talked to these people that were selling their home, and the other realtor that had come before this lady must have skewed numbers in some way, said that she had like several hundred closings the past year, which had to have been either just a straight up lie, or she might have been lumping in numbers from her team, which you shouldn't really count in a situation like that. But nonetheless, this friend of mine lost out on the listing because the people that were listing their home were like, well, you're too small time. We want this other agent that does hundreds of transactions per year. So all that to say, no win situation if I reveal specifics on those numbers, but I will reveal some high level stuff. So my best year on record is still 2021, which shouldn't really be a huge surprise since that's the best year in the history of Greenville real estate. It's not going to be my best year for forever. It's not going to be Greenville's best year forever either. But right now, for a lot of realtors, 2021 was their best year. No different for me. We've had 2 straight declines in our market in real estate closings, and that's reflected in my personal numbers. I had 7.7% fewer closings in 2023 than I did in 2022. 22 was down from 21 as well. And the money that I made from commissions in 23, about 9.4% less than 2022. And yes, I'm recording this before the end of the year. I'm factoring in some end of year. I'm making some end of year assumptions in some of those numbers. So my business was down a little bit, given the fact that I essentially lost 2 months out of the year. It's really not down much at all. But also, as you guys know, if you listen frequently, I flip houses a little bit on the side, not a big thing that I do. But I did that more this year than previous years, knowing that it was going to be a down year, and also feeling like there was an opportunity to bring some inventory to the market in a low inventory environment. And so I actually ended up making more money on the house flips and things of that nature than I normally do. And that more than made up for the decrease in commissions. For those of you that are really worried about me, yes, I'm talking to you, Mom, assuming that you're listening. I'll say this as well. Another positive is that my average commission has gone up substantially in recent years, going up every year since 2020. Some of that is simply the result of me being able to command a better commission split with my company that I'm with. In other instances, that's simply the result of me entering a higher tier market, as it were. Although you guys know, I don't look down on anything. I had a $80,000 listing earlier this year. Last year, I had a $60,000 listing. I don't look down on actually, it was a $50,000 listing last year. I don't look down on small time things at all. So you guys know I cut my teeth in this business helping investors. That was really how I started. And those investor closings, particularly back in like 2017, 2018, you're talking about $30,000, $40,000 homes with regularity. And so I'm never going to look down on small transactions. I legitimately am not focused on my commission. I'm focused on just delivering the best service that I can for my clients. I get fulfillment out of that. And I'm not just saying that to say it. Like that's legitimately true. Now, I found this interesting. I kind of broke down because I wasn't really sure exactly how many specifics I was going to give in this episode. So I broke down my business in terms of I looked at total closings. I looked at investor closings. Like I said, traditionally, a huge portion of my business has been for investors. I also looked at new construction. Obviously, we've talked about new construction has been a much bigger part of the market in recent years. So I looked at that as well. And basically, here's what I concluded. Since 2019, 2020, my business has completely transitioned from being around 30 to 50% investors. So 30 to 50% investor closings. Relocations back 2019, 2020, people moving here from out of state, very low. 0 to 5% relocations, just kind of depending on the year. It would be like I might have one closing one year and then 0 the next, maybe 2 the next year, whatever. Small percentage of my closings. And then about 50 to 60% of my closings were just your standard owner-occupant, Greenville to Greenville moves. Someone that's just staying in Greenville, but upsizing or downsizing or whatever the case may be. That all has transitioned. Again, 30 to 50% investors, almost no relocations, and then roughly 50% Greenville to Greenville, 50 to 60%, depending on the year, Greenville to Greenville moves. That has transitioned now to my business is roughly 20% investors, so that's gone way down. And that's just a reflection of the fact that there's not been a whole lot of opportunities to invest recently. 20% relocations, that's in large part due to this show and to you guys listening to the show from out of state, looking for a realtor and contacting me, and I really appreciate that. And 60% of my business, roughly speaking, is Greenville to Greenville. So that's about the same. That really hasn't changed. I said before it was 50 to 60% before. Basically, the biggest thing that's changed is my investor pool has gone down, and my relocations have gone from basically being an afterthought in my business to being a core chunk of my business. So I find all of that to be very interesting. What about the market as a whole? All right, so that was my specific business. Let's just talk about the market as a whole for a second. First off, contingencies. Again, this isn't going to be anything shocking, but for those of you that are new to the show, contingencies are back. They came back with a vengeance in 2023. And when I say contingencies, a lot of people think about home sale contingencies, right? When someone makes an offer on a home and it's contingent on the sale of their homes. But I'm talking about all contingencies, due diligence contingencies, financing contingencies, all of those types of things. But home sale contingencies, for sure, those were dead between 2020 and 2022. They are back. Sellers are no longer afraid of home sale contingencies because they're not getting as many offers as they used to get. They can't be as choosy as they used to be able to be. And so here we are. We have more and more home sale contingencies and other contingencies than we've had in the past. VA loans are back. I'm VA loan certified. I love VA loans. A lot of agents don't like them because they've had a bad experience with them. I think that's a bunch of hogwash. I think that they're blaming VA loans on something that you can easily blame an appraiser for, right? And I've talked about appraisers. I'm not going to trash them on the show. There's another time and place for that. But I'm a big proponent of VA loans. VA loans in 2023 are the highest percentage that they've been since 2019, and we're almost back to 2019 levels. So we had this period of time where VA loans really started to go down in terms of a percent of the market. And again, this is just, you've got all these agents that are scared of them, and they'll warn their seller clients, you know, particularly in a multiple offer situation, hey, you don't want to accept a VA loan. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong with it. Listen, it's about the same amount of stuff that can go wrong with any other loan program that's out there. I'm not worried about them. I'm glad to see that they're coming back comparably to what they were before the pandemic. Cash transactions. This is also an interesting tidbit for me. Cash transactions essentially flat in 2023 as compared to 2022. About 25%, a quarter of the market, a quarter of closings are cash transactions. It used to be pre-pandemic, well below 20%, closer to 15, 16, 17%. Usually that was where we were hovering. But since the pandemic, or well, really since, let's see here, since around towards the end or middle towards the end of 2021, that really started to change. Cash transactions have always been king, but particularly now, a quarter of transactions are cash transactions, a huge amount. And that's a direct result of there being a lot of baby boomers and other people that are sitting on a lot of cash that aren't afraid to spend it, that like real estate as an option for dumping that cash in versus taking a risk in the stock market or whatever the case may be. Okay, we're going to look at the market stats that were just released for the month of November. But before we do that, we are going to talk about the $200 Amazon gift card giveaway. We're finally getting to the details. I told you it'd be in the middle of the show. So here we are. All right, very simple how you can get this $200 gift card. It's only one gift card. Only one of you guys are going to get it. You got to do a few things. First, you got to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. I don't care which podcast app it is. If it's Apple, if it's Spotify, if it's something else, you need to subscribe to it on there. Secondly, you need to go to YouTube. You need to find this podcast on YouTube. I'll tell you how to find it, because people are stealing my Selling Greenville name on YouTube, which is very easy to do. What you need to do is you need to search Selling Greenville Podcast, okay? And I recently changed my username on there to @SellingGreenvillePod. But if you just go to YouTube and you just search 3 separate words, Selling Greenville Podcast, I promise you that you'll find it. You can also just search my name. You'll likely find it that way as well. And once you do that, you want to subscribe to the show on YouTube, and you need to like an episode, and you need to comment on one of the episodes on YouTube. This is what I want to grow this year. I want to grow the YouTube channel. I do plan to improve things like the video quality. My background, which has been this window ever since I started this. At some point, there's going to be a better background than a window, I promise you guys. But guess what? I thought that was going to happen this year, right? I started doing this video when I thought, okay, this is going to be a slow year, and then it ended up not being a slow year, and so I wasn't able to get back to trying to improve the video quality. That's a good thing, and I thank you guys for that. The video quality will improve. But when you guys do like, subscribe, and comment on one of my episodes on the YouTube channel, you need to actually give a specific comment about the episode, okay? Not just like awesome content or something like that. Actually comment on the episode, something related to the episode that you listen to, right? You obviously listen to it. I'm fine if you want to ask a question as well. I will get back to you as I have opportunity. But that would be okay as well. How long do you have to do this? You have until January the 4th to do this. And then I will select someone at random from the people who did this, and I will announce on my January 10th episode of this podcast who won, okay? So you'll need to tune in. Really, you want to tune in every week, right? But you want to do all of these things. Subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Subscribe on YouTube. Like and comment on an episode on YouTube. And do all of that by January 4th. And then listen to the show on January 10th. I believe it's January 10th, but it's that week. And then I will announce who won on that show. And I might announce the name. I might not be able to identify you, depending on how your name shows up. So it's the kind of thing where I'm going to say it on the show, and then I might be asking you guys who you are, and then asking you to text me which one of you it is. So please make sure that you listen. All right. We are going to transition here to market stats, and I'm going to screen share. If you'll just bear with me 1 second. Well, this is taking a lot longer than I anticipated because I keep clicking on other things by accident. All right. Let's see here. Share screen. Here we go. All right. Market stats. All right, here we go. Got the market stats here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see these. If you're not, if you're just listening, that's fine as well. I'm just going to hit some high points. I'm not going to go through these in a ton of details, simply because I don't want this show to go too long. New listings. New listings data was up 15.2% year on year. Very interesting. And here's what I think is happening. Mortgage rates are going down. More people are buyers. Buyers are typically sellers. So demand goes up. Also supply goes up. Usually those things happen in tandem. And so guess what? New listings went up 15.2%. It was still a big drop off month to month. But still, that's a pretty tremendous increase. And now we've had 2 straight months of new listings increases. Again, very interesting. I would imagine, since mortgage rates are still down, that this trend will continue into January. Pending sales for the most recent month. For some reason, the Greater Greenville Association of Realtors, who produces these stats, for some reason, always the most recent month is not right for pending sales. But what I anticipate is that this 715 number for the month of November is going to be revised into the low 1000s. Compared to November of 2022, our pending sales were 987. So we should see, I'm predicting that once this number is revised, we will see our first increase in pending sales since April of 2023, April of this year. So that will be interesting to see if I'm right. But I think that I am going to be right because I know these stats very well. As you guys know, if you've listened to this, but also just, again, common sense. Mortgage rates going down, demand goes up, pending sales are going to go up as well. Closed sales for the month of December were down 4.8% year on year, but still following the normal seasonal trend line. It was just that we just happened to have a stronger than expected November of last year. If you're looking at the chart, you can see that there was a little upswing in November 2022. That was an anomaly. Remember, I said demand stabilized in November of last year. That's one of the indicators that we have of that. Days on market until sale. We hit our highest number since May of this year. We're at 44 days on market until sale. That's a 25.7% increase year on year from November of last year, which was at 35. Now, what will be interesting to see is if we find a way to surpass the first quarter numbers of last year. We got all the way up to 58 days on market until sale in March of last year. I could see it going either way. With mortgage rates going down, if that holds, if we keep seeing mortgage rates into the first quarter of next year below 7%, then I would be very surprised if we exceeded the days on market number of the first quarter of last year. I would think that we would have lower days on market numbers because going to be more buyer demand coming into the market. But we'll have to see, because there are a lot of homes right now that are kind of languishing on the market that aren't reflected in this days on market data. And when they sell, after having been on the market for 120, 150 days, it's going to really skew this data. So this will be very interesting to see. This is the kind of data where I would honestly, we're looking at averages, but I would love to see the median for this. But unfortunately, we don't have that. That's not very simple. I could probably try to pull that myself, but for the time being, I'm just going to rely on the GGAR numbers. What we do have a median for is the median sales price. And the median sales price came down month on month to $312,750, but that's still up 2.9% year on year, which is, when you look at the entire year, that's one of the stronger year on year increases that we've had for the whole year. And this has been something we've been looking at really closely. I've been telling you guys, you know, hey, we've got to look at seasonality. We know that prices are gonna come down in the fourth quarter of this year, but it's important to compare year on year versus just month on month. And here we are. December of last year was at 295. All right, so for us to end the year below December of last year, we would have to see the month-on-month number come down really low, and we've not had a print below 300,000 since March. So it's really, really looking like we're going to end 2023 with a positive median sales price print, which is indirectly tied to price appreciation. So it's not one-to-one that this median sales price going up means that every home has appreciated in value in the Greenville market. But it is an indicator that that's happening. And so 312,000 was the November number. That's up from 303, about 304,000 in November of last year. So a 2.9% increase year on year. The average went up 5.5%. Again, as I've said before, the median is more accurate when we're trying to track what's happening in the market, because the average sales price is skewed by those really expensive homes that sell every now and then. But still, it was up 5.5%. We only had 1 month. We discussed this last week. 1 month that was down. That was the month of March. Every other month has been up year on year. And, the past 5 months in particular have been really strong. We've only had 1 month that was less than 5.5% increase year on year to the average price of a home in Greenville. That was the month of August. It was 2%. Otherwise, we've been seeing the average sales price go up over 5%, over 5.5% every single month for the past 5 months, with the exception of August. Percent of list price received stayed flat, 98.3%, and this now gives us our first month of the year where the percent of list price received was higher year on year. November of last year was 98.1%. November of this year, 98.3%. So sellers are, for the first time on a year-on-year basis, getting more than they did the year prior for their home. And you can, if you're looking on YouTube, you can read the description. I'm not going to get into the weeds on it, but this is the percentage found when dividing a property's sales price by its most recent list price, then taking the average for all properties sold in a given month, not accounting for seller concessions. Okay, I'm not going to explain all of that again because we need to keep plugging away with this. I've explained that in other episodes that you can go back and listen to. Housing Affordability Index. We had some nice movement in the month of November. Finally, a little bit of relief for home buyers. And I would imagine that this is heavily related to mortgage rates going down. It went up from 79 Housing Affordability Index to 86 in the month of November. Now, that's still a 6.5% year-on-year decrease from the 92 that we had the prior year, but it's at least good to see it getting higher in the month of November. Now, seasonally, that is pretty normal, but I'm hoping that this trend continues for the next few months as mortgage rates hopefully are lower than what they've been. So that's great to see. What we want to see this number at is 100, when at least 100. 100 means that the median household, the standard household in Greenville, can afford the median priced home. So that's what we want to see at 86. Then the median household can only afford 86% of the median priced home in the market. That's not great. We want to see that number higher insofar as we can. Inventory of homes for sale. This is another one similar to pendings that is typically off a little bit. Okay, so it says 4,055, which is a big increase from November of last year, which was 3,522. That's going to get revised down to probably 3,700, 3,800, something like that after it's all said and done. Still going to be an increase year on year. In October, the last month that we have these stats for was up 3.8% year on year. It'll probably be something similar for the month of November. So inventory is still going up, but it's going up at a much slower pace than it was with some of these earlier prints. Like in March, we had inventory was up 114% year on year. We're not seeing anything like that. We're still below the pre-pandemic norms, right? So as long as we are below 4,000, we are still below pre-pandemic, but we're getting closer. We're getting very close to the pre-pandemic norms. Now, that said, we're still not particularly, well, I guess we're getting closer to the pre-pandemic norms in month supply. You don't want to look at the most recent number, but we're right around 3% month supply. That's what October was revised to. And I imagine that November is going to be pretty close to that, about 3 months supply of inventory. And so we'll keep tracking that. I talked a lot about that in some other episodes recently, so I'm not going to get in the weeds on that. So there we go. That is some of what's happening in the market based on the market stats. Nationwide, we've had a decline in closing. I read some data recently. 18% decline in closings nationwide. So Greenville is much more steady and stable than that, and that's something that I think is great. I like that about our market. The highs in Greenville aren't as high as other places, and the lows aren't as low when it comes to the real estate market. And that's really helpful for me as a realtor. That's really helpful for a lot of my clients. They when you're in a boom and bust type of market, that's really terrifying if you're a buyer or a seller. The Greenville market is stable, and that's reflected in all of these numbers at the end of the day. Now, next week, I've got another episode that I'm very excited for. We're going to talk about the bold predictions that I have for the year 2024. We're going to kick off 2024, right, with 10 bold predictions. But before then, we had this episode, the recap of 2023. I hope you guys appreciated it. I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you, all of my listeners. I'm looking forward to giving away a $200 Amazon gift card to one of you. If you skip to the end to try to figure out how to get that gift card, you're going to have to rewind because I said it earlier. But I appreciate you guys listening. Please like, rate, review, subscribe to this podcast, however you're watching or listening. And please, just a reminder as always, my contact information is in the show notes. Fox News found it, and they sent me an email, and I replied to them within just a few hours. I actually saw it right when it hit my inbox, and I said, I need to not look desperate. I'm going to wait a few minutes before I respond to this. And so that's exactly what I did, which, I don't know, it's probably a silly thing to do, but it was a slow day, and I saw that email as soon as it came in, and I was tempted to just respond right away, and I was like, no, give it some time to breathe, give it some time to think about your response, and so I did. But yeah, there's a little peek behind the veil at how some of that went down. But I appreciate all you guys. That contact information is in the show notes. If you need a realtor, or if you're a media publication, you need a comment on the Greenville market, here you go. I'm your guy. Thank you guys for listening. We will talk again next time.